Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest Urban Living webinar. Today, we are going to be talking about an increasingly important and sizable proportion of the population, that's Gen Z, and we're going to try and find out what they want from urban living. My name's George Sell. I am not a Gen Zer, as you can probably tell, but I'm very interested in the subject. I'm editor of Urban Living News, and we are an online B2B platform for the real estate and hospitality sectors. Now, these urban living webinars have a couple of sponsors, and we're just going to very quickly see some videos to find out some more about them. And the first of our sponsors today is Minute.
Dear hosts and property managers, hosting can be difficult. We get it. Watching out for parties, making sure your guests have a wonderful stay, keeping neighbors happy, coordinating cleaning and security staff. We see all the work you do every day, and we want to help. Wouldn't it be great to have a co-host? Someone to welcome your guests when they arrive. Remind them about house rules when they're getting a bit too loud. Keep your home safe when they leave. We're Minute, the co-host that helps you care for your home, guests, and community. We come highly recommended. We're reliable, and we're eager to help. So let us be your co-host today. With love, Minute.
Okay, thanks very much to Minute, and you can see their contact details in the chat if you'd like to find out more about them and carry on the conversation. And our second sponsor today is Price Labs. And again, thank you to Price Labs, and you can see their contact details in the chat if you'd like to get in touch. So today's webinar is going to last around an hour. We'd like to make it as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, please submit them using the chat or the Q&A function. There'll be a recording of the session sent to everyone who was registered. And when we get to the end, because we're going to post quite a lot of information in the chat during the session, we're going to run the countdown clock again for a couple of minutes at the end, so you can take some notes of all the info that's been posted in there. So I just wanted to define Gen Z quickly and highlight a couple of quite interesting stats before we start the conversation. So Gen Z basically includes everyone born between 1997 and 2012. So the oldest of them are around 25 now. Some of these stats I found quite startling, actually. Their average attention span is apparently 8 seconds, and that's how long they need to decide if something is worth their time. And that includes buying decisions. I mean, when it comes to living, I'm sure there is more consideration than that, but these are people who make up their mind very, very quickly, which is really relevant in the way that you market to these people. They're on their smartphones a lot. More than half of them use their smartphones for 5 or more hours daily, which again has implications for marketing. And the size of this cohort is really significant. By 2030, nearly a third of the global workforce will be Gen Z. And on the next slide, just thought there was a really interesting quote which kind of jumped out at me, which I think is very pertinent to today's discussion. So with the rise in remote work and lifestyle flexibility, Gen Z may place more value on financial and locational freedom than on shelling out the cash to own a home. However, this shift in values doesn't mean Gen Zers don't want to own homes. If anything, it's a sign of the times. Young people know they can't afford homes, so they're not structuring their lives with home ownership in mind. That really resonated with me, and I can kind of see that happening in my daughter's generation of people and how they're living their lives. So let's get on with the conversation. We've got a fantastic panel here, including a real live Gen Zer, and we're going to meet them in turn. I'll ask the guys to introduce themselves quickly, and then we'll crack on with our conversation. So we'll go from left to right. Dheraen, good afternoon to you, and welcome back to the Urban Living webinar.
Thank you, George. I just want to check you can hear me all right?
Yep, loud and clear.
Perfect. Cool. So nice to meet you, everybody. My name's Dheraen. Really happy to be involved, and Gen Z, similar to you, George, is something I'm really interested in as well. So I am General Manager in Build to Rent for Greystar, who some of you may know to be obviously one of the largest UK operators in both Build to Rent and student housing. And I'm actually recently joined them to be the General Manager of the Coppermaker Square scheme based in E20 in Stratford. So nice to meet you all. Really looking forward to hearing the discussion.
Thank you. And Yianni, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, and I'm Yianni Tsitouras. So I'm one of the founders of POHA. So at POHA, we develop and operate co-spaces. That's a place where professionals can live, work, and stay, and that's all under one roof. It's a home and a community that's meant to connect people in a new and a better way. We've got around about 1,100 future residents living and working in developments with us, and we're looking to actively get into the UK market and expand the concept there.
Excellent. Thank you, Yianni. And finally, our very own Rachel from IHM. Welcome to you.
Hi, George. Thank you so much. So I'm Rachel. I'll be offering today an insight on what Gen Z expects of their co-living or any apartment or housing things they will have. At the moment, I am living in a co-living residence from Gravity Co-living, and I'm an international student from the Netherlands. Thanks,
Rachel. And we'll hear more from you later on. But first, we're going to have a half an hour or so chat with our other panelists, and then we'll incorporate you into the conversation a bit later. So firstly, I want to ask the two accommodation providers what they have broadly seen in terms of changing attitudes to home ownerships and renting property amongst this Gen Z demographic. Dheraen, do you want to kick off with that one?
Yeah, so just a heads up, because I have done quite a bit of a thought process around this. So I've got a lot of notes here, but just to give you some context, so the answers that I've gone through will be both from my experience. So I've been in Build to Rent for kind of 5.5 years. So looked at sort of different areas in London, different scheme sizes, and worked for 3 different operators. So I can kind of give a bit of a broad overview there. But also I've got the perspective from the Coppermaker Square team, who kind of did a whole piece of research around the consumer that they were targeting as well. So I'll go through the 2 things. Okay. So to start off, I think obviously the question here was sort of around the lifestyle change and looking at how their work life and travel and, you know, their new habits, how that impacts their accommodation choices. So I think obviously we're all kind of familiar, right, with the level of amenity offering that these spaces needs to give now. But something that I think that is really, really important, and something that I think we've done really well now at Coppermaker Square, for example, is just looking at that in a lot more detail. So looking at how basically we want people to use these spaces, and you know, making sure that the design is done in that way. So something I read, and I think it summarizes it really well, is whether it's the apartment or the amenity spaces now in Build to Rent, for example, there needs to be kind of equal balance between a me space or a we space. And I think this kind of really targets the Gen Z behavior in that, you know, that whole sort of digital lifestyle now, they're not actually as interactive or I guess social as we might think. And they find it really, really kind of important to them that they need to be able to have that option as to whether they're in the amenity space or not. They might just want to be left alone in those spaces, or they can choose to kind of opt in and out of the social element. So to give an example of that, like for example, Coppermaker Square, we've really done a great job on the co-working offering. So you've got like a range there of kind of small booths that can be bookable and they're soundproofed, and you literally don't even need to see anybody else all day. Or you've got like communal booths, or you've got open plan communal work desks that will really kind of encourage and facilitate conversation. So it is again, just looking at that to make sure that, you know, we're not just assuming that all communal spaces need to be completely communal, but they provide that ability for people to have their own privacy in the amenity and also in their own home as well. So that was quite nice. And I think keeping that me and we concept is stuck in my head quite a lot. And then I think just in terms of, you know, kind of provision for that as well. So I think something I've definitely seen as kind of different schemes I've worked on is in order to kind of accommodate the Gen Z and all residents now based on how we work, things like simple things like USB provision and plug sockets and electrical sockets, and looking at that right from the early stages of the design, all of this needs to be factored in, because the demand for this now is like huge in people's decision making. They want to be able to feel like they've got, you know, accessibility to all of that at any point. They don't need to kind of queue for other residents or fight over it with other residents. It's kind of a given that they can access these things as standard. So that's something that, yeah, I think particularly after COVID, we had to adapt. And again, like Coppermaker Square, we've got power sockets, USBs at nearly all access points in the co-working. So it just shows you that the need for that. And then I think the other point as well is sort of looking at the amenity spaces as far as, you know, lifestyle, and looking at how we operate that. So our opening hours, we've had to amend that. So previously, and I think prior to COVID, you would kind of, as an operator, you'd have your standard hours and you might have your kind of cleaning team working in those standard hours. But actually now, because of the kind of whole nomad lifestyle and digitalization of work, we need to adapt to that. So we need to basically ensure that if someone has an international call at 11 o'clock at night and they've actually got children, or, you know, whatever that might be, they can go and use those spaces, and it is very, very flexible. So again, you know, not only for Gen Z, but for everybody, they really want to be able to ensure that the amenity spaces are great, but they want to be able to do it and kind of have that there in their own time and their own way. A few other things that we had as well. So looking at like furniture design within the apartment, based on our change of kind of habits, we had to look at ensuring that if, for example, a smaller size unit, you wanted to kind of have the ability to work from home there, but you actually are only kind of designing that space for a couple or a single occupant, you need to make the most of like the basic things like your dining table. So I remember going through a process of basically measuring out that dining table to make sure it could accommodate two people having dinner together, but also when you're kind of in the middle of your work and you've got your laptop and your mouse and your coffee, that space can accommodate for that use as well. And it's looking at that kind of multi-use, the way that the home is now used as your office as well is kind of unavoidable. And so we had to adapt our traditional furniture packs to make sure that it's suitable for that. Something that we're seeing a lot of, and particularly with Coppermaker Square as well, we've got some really fantastic size sort of 2-bedroom apartment offerings there. And already, you know, we've only been leasing for 4 weeks there, and we've seen such a demand purely for that second bedroom to be the work from home, you know, the work from home office. And I think that's been going on for a while now, but it's great to see that actually people are still doing it, and you know, it's not just a COVID thing, it's actually here to stay.
Do you have any projections about what percentage of your occupancy at Coppermaker Square when you're fully leased up is going to be in this Gen Z cohort? And do you think that, from speaking to the ones already there, do you think they are prepared to be renting accommodation for much later in their lives than previous generations?
So we don't have residents as of yet, so they're actually moving in January, which is only around the corner. So we don't kind of have that element just yet. But in terms of kind of the period and the length of tenancy, I think this is really key, and something that people are really interested in particularly is the longer term tenancy, and just making sure that they can have that security with us. So the majority of people that we're speaking with, you know, we will obviously offer them the options that we can provide at Greystar, but they are very, very interested in being there for the long run. And I know we've got a topic on that later, just in terms of kind of the changing of attitudes with this with particular Gen Zs. But this ties into that. I think they definitely are keen to have security and have a place that they can call home, and they know that that apartment is theirs. In terms of percentages for Coppermaker Square with Gen Z, I guess at the moment it's probably too early to say that. But ask me again in a few months' time, and I think we can give you a good indication once we've had probably the first few months in terms of inquiries and things. Yeah, I'm excited to see it, to be honest, because I do think our offering has done, you know, that the research that's been done, and this is kind of going back to the Coppermaker Square team kind of prior to me joining, they've really looked at that renter demographic from a wide range of people, just to ensure that the Gen Z market is really targeted, and they've incorporated some fantastic offerings like the gaming centre. We've got an actual gaming room and PS4s and Xboxes and all of these things that are really in line with the kind of Gen Z's hobbies. Yeah. So I know it's kind of at the forefront of their mind. I think it'll just be interesting to see, you know, the interest that we get now from that.
Yeah. Thanks, Dheraen.
No
Yianni, do you know roughly what proportion of your customer base across the properties fits into this Gen Z bracket? And have you managed to discern any difference in attitude towards home ownership prospects and rentals among them from older residents, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So we can talk about Munster. That's just been released. And Munster's got 313 residents, and 30% of them are actually Gen Z. We've also got 20% that are over 40, and then the 50 is X and Y. So it's really across the board, which surprised us because we thought it would be more of a younger demographic attracted to the offerings that we had, especially in co-spaces. I think what we've seen is probably shifts that have been a change in attitudes to ownership that have been present for a long time, which is people preferring access over ownership. And I think what's really changed is not just the attitude to ownership, it's the attitude to rental accommodation. I think rental accommodation in the past was seen as something very temporary, but at the moment, people are seeing it as a solution that is very flexible. And in our co-spaces that we provide, it's increasingly flexible. So you can stay short-term if you want, or you can stay long-term if you need to be. And that's because that we design the spaces with comfort in mind for a long-term living solution. But what's the offering is the right solution for the right people, depending on your circumstances, and that can be 6 months or 6 years. And that's what we are seeing at the moment. And I think currently, I think everyone's extremely happy to be in our building in Munster, especially with interest rates rising, utility costs going up, and they've got this all-inclusive rental price. So it's undoubtedly appealing without them having to deal with falling property values.
And are you seeing any trends in length of stay or demand for length of stay from the Gen Z as compared with other demographics? Are they looking for more permanence, or are they more transient than the older demographics?
So I think they're looking for, I would say, permanence, but they're signing up to be transient. So they're signing up for 6 months, which is our shortest available option in Munster. In other buildings, we have short terms like day to day, week to week, month to month. But in Munster, they're signing up for 6 months, and we're seeing their commitments on a 6 month basis, where older generations we're seeing for kind of a longer commitment basis. In Munster, we've got an average lease length of around about 3 years. So there's a big difference between different generations. But I don't think that means they necessarily want to be there on a short-term basis. They just want the flexibility.
Yeah, and maybe they want to try it out before they commit to a longer period, test you out.
And well, I'm happy to say we're 100% let. So yeah, so it was really good, and that shows the demand actually. So we were 100% let within 3 months, which really shows the demand for the product and what we're providing. Yeah,
and picking up on one of the themes that Dheraen mentioned there, are a lot of these Gen Z residents predominantly working from your property as well, and if so, what do they require to facilitate that?
Yeah, I think that the perception of how kind of we live, work, and consume has completely changed, and that's been enabled by a digital revolution, and it's basically people want that freedom to have that work-life balance and work what they want. And we've got that in our office from our team, and we know other people have got that from their team. So they definitely require a space to work. They need that connectivity. They need that, as we just talked about. So you have to ensure there's like sockets in the right places, but you also have to ensure that when you provide them with this space, that they can actually have a place where they can collaborate. I think what's happened and what the pandemic highlighted is that, you know, the home isn't set up to be a home office. I think many people have realized that, and they saw the faults of working from your kitchen table. And what we provide in the co-spaces, so in our other schemes, we have a designated co-working offering, and that's independent and can fully function as a co-working. So you can go there and have that brainstorming activity that you want to, but then you can also come back home and disconnect, so you're not in the same environment. We think that's really, really important.
Okay, thanks, Yianni. Dheraen, one of the stats that we saw earlier was how quickly Gen Z can make up their minds about something. I think that initial filtration process is basically to decide if something is not for them, and then if they like the look of it, they'll investigate further. How do you market to those particular consumers who do things in a different way from older generations? How do you get through to them, and what role does a brand play in that procedure?
Yeah, so I think, and just to give context, so I had a really good conversation with the marketing team at Greystar about this as well, because they did a lot of pre-work, and you know, essentially Coppermaker Square, there was a whole piece of work around the brand creation of this. And I know that the kind of creators of it are very, very precious about the brand particularly. And one of the key things with this, and it's quite interesting because you wouldn't think it with Gen Z, but actually, so one of the findings was that Gen Z, they really like storytelling, and they really like to see the consistency of storytelling as part of, you know, brand creation and marketing. And to give you an example, so that the Coppermaker Square brand came about through basically a heritage piece. Now, again, you wouldn't expect that, and you wouldn't expect it to be sort of, you know, relevant for Gen Z, but actually the way that we've utilized that through the whole offering is really consistent, and that's kind of how we've really set ourselves apart. So to give you some background, so the Coppermaker Square name itself comes from the fact that ultimately that the area that we're located in, so right in the middle of kind of Stratford, East London, was predominantly kind of really well known and famous, if you like, for the train industry. So essentially what the marketing team have done with that is they've used it in every element of the marketing. So all the buildings are named after really key influential individuals who basically, they were kind of activists within the train industry. So it could be the first Black train driver, the first female train driver, etc. And we've got every single building named after somebody. So again, it's kind of just really telling a story. And then we've gone kind of another level into that. So every apartment name is named after a train part, for example. But anyway, I'm going into it because it's a very interesting story for me. But essentially, what we've then done with that is made sure that it kind of goes through every element of kind of branded collateral. So you'll see touches to copper throughout the whole building, throughout the whole amenity space, even to the cutlery, for example. And then essentially kind of it just really makes sure that that brand piece and that heritage is cemented, and it allows for a really nice story to be consistently told. So that's kind of the brand element. And then I think one thing that I've definitely found, and I'm sure you guys will agree, is that the Gen Z, product is really important to them, but actually it's kind of the fact that their social status needs to be really, really kind of their priority. And I think, you know, ultimately it's kind of looking at the whole thing as an experience and not just the product. And that's what Gen Z buy into. And I think that's where for marketing companies and marketing teams, this is great for us, because you can really do a lot of work, like specifically with social media now, to really kind of build that picture and build that lifestyle for them, because ultimately that's what's important to them. They need to be seen in the best light in terms of their social status, whether that's online or in real life. That's what they're looking for. And kind of how did we do that? So it's looking at, you know, alternative methods, and it's kind of becoming more popular in all different industries now, but things like using reels on Instagram, you know, very kind of tapping into that TikTok kind of market, etc. Looking at influencers and kind of just making sure that, you know, if you're doing that, that the influencer values are kind of in line with the brand values. And, you know, if we as a brand are kind of championing sustainability, which we are at Coppermaker Square, you know, our influencers have to do the same thing. And it's a whole minefield, to be honest, but it's fascinating. And actually it's hugely successful when you're not only looking at Gen Zs, but kind of all of our target market, you know, particularly in build to rent.
Are these kind of social media channels more fruitful for marketing to this generation than, say, Rightmove and local estate agents? Then that's the prime route to them, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, to be honest with you. I think if you look at, going back to the COVID topic, I know we've moved on, but really that's where the majority of this demographic got their news stories from, got the latest information, and that's now where they kind of look for all sources of information, is from there. And you'll see now there's so much more activity in terms of, you know, the marketing from all different types of rental or you know, sale properties on there. I don't know whether it's because I talk about housing during the daytime a lot, so they listen to me, but I get adverts all the time on there now. But yeah, ultimately, you know, they don't just want to see the Rightmove adverts anymore. They want to see how we connect with community, the businesses that we partner with, the design, the furnishings, and they want to see it consistently. And they also want to see the content, you know, multiple times. They want to basically see all the detail and kind of create that picture for themselves first before they make a decision. And I think you could only get so much from the likes of Rightmove nowadays. Yeah,
okay, that's interesting stuff. Yianni, we've described this this demographic as digital natives because they haven't really they're so used to the internet, and it's been a constant part of their lives. What digital experience do they expect from accommodation providers once they're with you, once you've got them to sign a lease? I mean, can they book spaces with apps? Can they pay their rent through apps? How does it work? What do they expect from you?
Yeah, so it's definitely moved to experience-based living, and what people are looking for are smart, simple, convenient solutions that enhance their lives, but also align with what's important to them. So at POHA, we definitely have embraced technology. You can obviously, well, not obviously because it's not obvious for everyone, but you can book your rooms online. We've installed smart IoT integrations throughout the building with smart locks. With our app, you can open your door. You can basically check in, check out by yourself if you want to. We don't encourage it because we encourage connection with the community and the community manager. You can book additional services if you want. And we find that this is definitely the way forward of what just not just Gen Z, but every generation is moving towards. And on top of this, we designed that we feel that the demand from digital natives goes beyond technology. It's to create spaces where they can feel comfortable as a home, where they have that flexibility, they have that amenity. And at POHA, we're also committed to kind of to well-being and sustainability, and we feel those go hand in hand. So we make sure that all our buildings are well certified. We try to create spaces where people can feel good, like mentally, socially, and physically, because it's important to create a platform where people feel comfortable. And it's exactly as we said before, spaces where they can connect, but also spaces where they can disconnect, and a platform where you can have a real life community, and a platform where you can have real life connections, where it's not just all online. And I think that's what people are demanding from accommodation now. I think that's the benefit of this new rental accommodation that's coming to the market.
Yeah, and Yianni, you mentioned the sustainability piece there. Do you think this generation have got more, I don't know how to put this, are they basing more decisions, more life decisions around their eco concerns than previous generations? And how does that manifest itself in accommodation choice?
Yeah, I think they are. So I think Gen Z are basically socially engaged and they care about the impact. And the beauty of, say, co-living is that on its foundations, it's sustainable because you have shared costs, you have this reduced carbon footprint, you stop this fast furniture culture, and we know that we can go further than that, and we try to go further than that, and we know that resonates with the demographic. And we can make and for us, it's about making sustainability viable and achievable. I think what's really important for us is authenticity in the communication and the offering that we offer to our residents and our communication online. So, and I think this is very important to Gen Zs, that you're transparent, you're honest, that you are not mis-selling and you're not greenwashing. And we're we're caught up on this all the time from our own team. And for us, it's about making sustainability viable. And as a builder, developer, we've threaded sustainability through the design, build, and operations of our building, and that's incorporating it in the whole kind of building life cycle. So, as you know, that we're involved with the first cradle-to-cradle co-living building co-living building in the world, and first cradle-to-cradle residential building in Europe, and that's a building that's trying to design out waste. And then in all of our other buildings, we're incorporating sustainability as we go along. But what's really kind of interesting to me is that the events that we've held, so we in the community, we hold sustainable events, we have panel discussions, we have activations. These are probably the worst attended events that we have, which is, and HomeView actually did a resident sustainability survey, and they saw what was actually important to Gen Zs in their survey was not so much as are you constructing sustainable buildings, but more, are there enough bicycle spaces? Are there enough recycle bins? That hasn't stopped us, because we know the biggest impact we can have is through the construction. So we've still threaded it through there, but it's interesting to see how these events were attended.
Dheraen, does that tally with your experience? I mean, are your clients particularly sustainability aware, and they can they see through greenwashing with an eagle eye?
Yeah, so I think we're really lucky with Coppermaker Square, to be honest. So the client, they actually have their whole initiative with other elements of their businesses, which is called Creating Better Places. And their vision is to kind of achieve that by 2030. And Coppermaker Square is a huge part of that, because actually what they're trying to achieve is, you've probably heard this phrase, but the whole kind of 15-minute city concept. So obviously where we're located, we're literally on the doorstep of one of the largest shopping centres in London, along with obviously the Olympic Park, which is fantastic in terms of green space. And to be honest, the more I think about it, really with Coppermaker Square and the 15-minute city concept of what we have around us, I actually struggle to think what we don't have. And I think that's quite exciting. Like, we really need to challenge ourselves now to see how we can innovate that even further. And I think this is kind of one of the biggest things that we're doing to really kind of encourage that sustainable lifestyle for our residents. So minimizing their need to even travel out of that 15-minute city, because of everything that we can provide to them, on their doorstep, is fantastic. But I think it kind of goes even further in terms of sort of the planning and how you work within the kind of planning requirements, and looking at, incorporating different methods of transport, and, the electric bike options, and ensuring that you've got car club offerings. And these are all things that we will provide to our residents at Coppermaker Square. I think that there's other elements as well with that. So similar to what Yianni was saying around kind of the events programming, I think, we're trying to always consider the wider picture here. So we're looking at things like not having plastic within our events program, and kind of just leaning on the current trends of things like reuse and recycle, and doing things like clothes swap events, or kind of bringing in people who've got refillable shops in the local area, and looking at how we can just transform just the small things in people's day-to-day. And the other things that we're doing as well is we're providing a sustainable lifestyle booklet to residents, and it's not printed, it's digital. But essentially it's again just really drawing their attention to things like, yes, we are, you know, obviously very ESG conscious with the construction, but what does that actually mean for a resident in their day to day? They want to know how that transpires in terms of saving them on their utility costs and better energy performance and smart meters. And like you said, obviously the waste strategy and where does that waste go? And then looking at how we can encourage them, you know, shopping more locally, providing them with tote bags, all of these things. You know, it doesn't need to be huge, massive incentives or initiatives, but there are simple things that you can do to just make people a little bit more aware of, you know, shopping locally, and you don't need to travel. And I think one of the things that we'll be doing very soon, and you guys probably already did it with your scheme, but looking at the whole travel plan. You know, we always have to do this annually with the planning committees, but you have to look at your residential travel, you know, annual review and just kind of analyse that and make sure that we're doing everything we can to give our residents better opportunities. Or, you know, do we need to look at our bike access strategy? Are we providing them with enough bike storage? All these things, you know, it is more important now than it ever was before. But I think it's good for us because we've got obviously our client incentive, which is much bigger than this, and I think they're really working hard to try and change everybody's lifestyle, not only from kind of the living experience but from retail and beyond. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Dheraen. Rachel, I want to bring you in here and we'll do our very own live case study. You've recently moved from the Netherlands to London. Can you tell us a bit about your journey, where you've ended up living, and how your decision-making process went, how you found out about your accommodation, and what about it appealed to you enough for you to move in there?
All right, so before I moved to London, I had about a month to find something, and I know for certain I wanted to have like a studio because I really like having my own space and not having to share anything like the amenities and stuff. So first I was looking around a little bit for studios, and I didn't even know co-living was a thing at the moment. So I came across a few companies that did it, including Gravity co-living at the moment. And I was like, oh, this actually exists. So I looked around a bit, looked up all the co-living providers they have here in London, where they're located. And for me, the most important thing, because London is quite expensive to live in, gotta be honest, I picked well. So price was a very big thing for me. And I have to be honest, most co-living things have been a bit out of my price point, except for Gravity. So it also consists on where they're based, and the closer they are to the city center, the more expensive they get because of how close they are. I have to say I live in Hounslow. It's the Westcourt Gravity co-living, and it's, I think, a minimum of 30 minutes travel to get to the city center area of London, and it's quite well actually. So eventually I landed at Gravity co-living. I saw the prices, I saw how it looked and what they offered, and they have like a communal space here as well where you can work from. They have like a nice sitting area where you can watch movies with a very big TV screen. They have a pool table, and they also have events. So every month they have like an event for new people to meet each other. I actually have my first one tonight, so I'm very excited to see how that will go. They have a Christmas dinner party that goes for all the residents of Gravity, so also from like other places. So eventually I saw the price point was pretty appealing for what you get as well. And then I ended up here.
And did you first come across it through a Google search, or was it social media targeting you because you'd been looking for co-living? How did you first come across it?
Google search, actually. I noticed that you've been talking a lot about social media being very important, but I've only looked in my experience through Google for something like this.
Okay. And when you'd discovered this property and you thought it was a potential option for you, what was the next stage? Did you look at lots of reviews? Did you check out what similar people to you were saying about it, or did you phone the company first to find out more? How did it go from there?
I looked at the reviews first because every graffiti co-living place has like their own thing on Google Maps, and then they can post reviews and stuff, and they have testimonials on their website as well. Then I was like, okay, I need to know a bit more and have some extra questions. So I contacted them on their own page. I was like, hey, are you able to have a chat with me? And they sat down almost a day later, very quickly. Asked them all the questions that I had about it, how it worked, what the options were, because the longer you're staying, the less you're paying with graffiti. So if you stay 3 to 5 months, it's the most expensive because it's the shortest amount of time you're staying here. So that was something that needed to be discussed as well to see how that would affect it. And afterwards, I was like, okay, good option, considered it. I was like, this seems like a very good deal to me, so let's do it.
Okay. And when you have completed your internship in London and you move back to the Netherlands, how many more years of study will you have after that?
None. I graduate in April.
You graduated. Okay. So what will your plans be when you go back to the Netherlands? Will you rent accommodation again? Do you think co-living will be an option for you there? And what is your feeling about home ownership and where that might be on the road for you in your life, and what sort of stage that might come in?
So after I'm done with school, I'm going traveling first for a few months, probably 6 months, and afterwards, I have no idea where I'm going to end up. I would like to live outside of the Netherlands, not in the Netherlands, but renting is the best possible option for me. And co-living is very top of the list. I'm very interested. I like how everything is arranged and the whole community surrounding it and the service in it. So I would definitely consider co-living as one of my best options to see. Regarding home ownership, I think it's everyone's goal at the moment to be able to afford a house, but the housing market is so crazy at the moment. Back in the Netherlands as well, you need at least 2 people to be able to buy a house at the moment. So if I would have the money, maybe in 5 years or something, and I've like settled myself, then I would love to own a home, but it really depends on salary, what I'm earning. If I'm a millionaire, then it's easy to find a home for me, obviously. But I wouldn't actually mind renting the rest of my life as well. So
yeah, okay. And do you think that attitude is fairly typical of your generation?
Yeah, the only thing I'm hearing right now back in the Netherlands with my friends is I have no clue how I'm going to afford a home later on. Yeah. And the renting prices are actually getting quite high as well at the moment. There's like a pretty big shortage, at least in my area, for renting, because a lot of providers rent out to families first and not to single people. So it's become quite a problem back in the Netherlands to be able to find something to rent very quickly as well.
Okay. One of the things that was mentioned earlier was events and trying to engender a sense of community and a development. And obviously it's early days for you, Rachel, but you've got your first event tonight. Was that an appealing part of the package? Was that one of the things that appealed to you about Gravity, that there would be events and that's the way of meeting other people?
Definitely very appealing to me, because I think when you're moving to a new city, you don't know anyone or not a lot of people. Being able to go to an event with people who you're sharing your home with or your building with is very interesting and a very nice way to make friends, be close to the community as well, see how they're doing, if they have any tips or they like to go out and explore the city with you or something else. And like the kind of events they are offering or could be offering is very interesting as well, because as Dheraen and Yianni both mentioned, that they like to look a lot at like what kind of events they're offering and what kind of events are very appealing is very interesting to hear as well, because it shows they're really thinking about what would be interesting for all the owners within our buildings. And it's a very appealing and very important part for me, at least, and I think for in the future and future co-living residents as well.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to step back in a minute and see if Dheraen and Yianni have got any questions for you. But first, have you got any observations on what we've been discussing earlier? And do you think we're getting a handle on what Gen Z really wants, or are we a bit wide of the mark?
I think you're at the moment going above expectations, what I heard, especially with the whole sustainability thing that you're offering. It's going so well, and what I heard is like pretty amazing to me, that you're like offering so much, and the things you're arranging and all the things you're thinking about, and like hearing you guys talk about everything, I'm like, okay, there's actually a lot of thinking that goes behind every small single steps that goes into providing a co-living residence. So yeah, I would be very interested in being able to live in one of your buildings if I had the chance, definitely.
Very good. There you go. Have you two got any questions for Rachel? Do you want to do a bit of live bit of market research here?
I do. I think, yeah, I like that feedback in terms of the sustainability, but I think just to comment on that, I think really that's why it is so important, because we as operators have such a big role in changing the way different demographics and different generations think and live. So I think it's interesting for you to say that feels like a lot and a lot of detail, but actually, you know, really the home is people's biggest purchase, it's their biggest investment, it's their biggest area that they spend their money and their time. So we need to really make sure that that's at the forefront of what we do. So yeah, but I just wanted to touch on that. And then in terms of question for you, I think if there was anything that you would say that operators can do better that we're not already doing, or that's not already working well, which area of the living experience do you think it would be in based on your experience in London?
Oh, now you're asking something. This is just for the personal opinion on the building I'm living in at the moment, because you mentioned the ability to have a communal space where you can work in private and have like your private cubicle and work in a communal space. We only have the communal space, so being able to offer like private spaces outside of your own studio or your apartment to work in is something that's actually very interesting and would be very nice to be able to see in other buildings as well. Furthermore, within my building, and I'm not sure if it's for all the buildings that Gravity offers, is again the sustainability part, because as far as I know, we don't do recycling here at the moment, which is something I would really like to see improved for my building. Furthermore, I can't really think of anything else, to be honest. You're touching down everything that is important.
Okay. Yianni, have you got
any... Thanks.
No worries.
Have you got any feedback or questions for Rachel?
Yeah, I was going to ask what you don't like, but you kind of covered that. But if you've got anything else you don't like about the kind of setup or how it's arranged, or the co-living environment, that would be great to hear. And probably I'm not sure if Gravity has an app. If they do have an app and they're connected, how often do you use that app, and how often do you connect to other people in your community through that app? Will be interesting to me.
I have to say our community app is pretty nice for what I've experienced. So within the app you can do everything. So we have one like a WhatsApp group with like everybody that is in the community, and then you have a separate WhatsApp group for everyone that lives within the building, including a few operators that goes about the building. You have all different groups for people who like to go out for food or like to explore the city. So when you want to set up the app, you can choose like, hey, I'm very interested in walking or very interested in going to see movies, and you are already placed in these different apps. And if you need maintenance, for example, you just click on the maintenance thing, you choose what you need maintenance on, explain a little bit extra, like, hey, this is happening. And they're actually very quick with that, because within 24 hours you have a reaction and be like, okay, is there a certain time or date that someone can come by and see something and see what's going on. So everything within the app is quite nicely arranged within Gravity.
All right, that sounds good. Dheraen, one of the things that we could probably touch on a bit more is how you kind of engender a sense of community in a development and enable your residents to make connections with each other, because as Rachel said, she's moved to a new city. She doesn't know anyone in the building or the area. What is the accommodation provider's role in facilitating that connection between people, and how do you guys do it?
Yeah, so this is something I absolutely love, to be honest. I think I would love to spend my working week doing this all the time over all the other things. But yeah, this is really the special part about our asset style, I think. I think this is where we can really make a difference. For me, I think that it's evident, and not only with Gen Z, but I think generally the type of consumer that we see, they generally are really open to being part of a community. They seek, you know, intimacy, connection, that they really want to feel part of something. And I think it's amazing really when you do it really well, and you can then kind of see for yourself that you've created small, like, little mini communities within your building. You know, that's something that I love. So how do we do that? I think the way I try and look at it is both kind of internally in the community. I look at it digitally, and I also look at it external to the building as well. So kind of if I start with the external, I think we always try, and this is kind of very, very common in build to rent generally, no matter which operator you work with. I think it's something that we do really well as an industry, but we try to do a lot of work when it comes to kind of, you know, charity organisations and voluntary opportunities, and looking at kind of the local authorities that we're a part of and how we can champion their local initiatives, or, you know, helping their vulnerable groups and things like that. And I think, again, we have, you know, a really big role to play, and we are a huge platform, and our residents are a huge audience to kind of participate in a lot of that. So that's one of the ways. And you know, sometimes you wonder, oh, will residents, you know, be interested in this? Will they be involved? But actually they really do, and they really like it. And it's, you know, if I think back a few years, you know, we do small things like a Christmas hamper collection for an elderly group in a borough in South London. And we were the ones who were collecting toiletries and chocolates and specific items. And we kind of like tested it and put it out there, and, you know, weren't too sure. And then the following day, we had a whole office full of all these things. So it's, you know, it doesn't need to be big again, but it is amazing. People do actually want to be involved. So that's one of the ways. I think one of the other ways is also looking at the supply chain piece as well. So how can we really, really make sure that we bring in local businesses, local people who've got passion about the area that we're in, and rather than kind of, you know, removing them and making them feel excluded from that, completely bringing them into it in every way we can, using their products, promoting them. So whether that's the flowers that we choose on the front desk, they're not just, you know, into Flora, for example, but they're actually Betty from the florist down the road, because everyone really likes Betty and she knows everyone in the area. And that's, again, this goes back to the storytelling that Gen Z people buy into, because then they will go and get their flowers from Betty and they'll start posting about it, and it kind of just continues on like that. So that's one of the ways. And then internally, we do a lot of work around events. And just to kind of touch on what Rachel was saying there, I think it's really important now, and there's actually a lot more pressure than before on operators, because the general sense of Gen Z is literally kind of instant gratification, right? So everything is like, need it now, want it now, and I'm already bored and I want something new already. So it's quite challenging in order to, you know, keep thinking of these new things. So you can't just do puppy yoga once a week anymore. That's not good enough, you know. And that's honest. Like you know, you can't. So what we've tried to do and what we're rolling out now at Coppermaker Square is we're doing very much a data-driven events program. So we're capturing not only people's demographics who will move in, because just because you work in finance, it doesn't mean that all you like is numbers. You know, we want to know about your hobbies. We want to know about what you aspire to be interested in, what you might not even know you're interested in, for example. So we try and tap into all of that. So we've kind of got this I guess themes, if you like, with our events, where we're looking at it from like a human need perspective. And I could talk about this all day, but really we're looking at not only kind of your wellness events, but also, you know, inspiring, educating, creativity, you know, connection, all these things. We basically have different event types and they will evolve through the seasons, and kind of just really making sure that that variation is current and it's in line with the trends that Gen Zs are interested in. So that's one of the ways. And then smaller things, and this is kind of going back to the sort of digital platforms. I think the way I look at it now is, you know, our team members and the quality of the service that they provide has to be mirrored throughout every touch point. So the app content and the app kind of efficiency needs to be just as good as the team on the front desk. And this is because essentially some Gen Z and some residents don't want to talk to us. They don't want to have the human interaction, but they will engage with the digital community. And so we need to make sure that all of that's consistent. So it's very small things that I'm really big on is, you know, we have to talk in the right language, and we have to refer to our residents as neighbours to each other, and making sure that we're encouraging them to be a good member of the community and making sure they clean up after their dog because of their neighbours. And these types of phrases and tones of voice, you know, we can't just say it on a poster in the lift anymore. It needs to be, that's what we believe in and we say at the front desk, but we also have it, you know, all throughout our app as well. So yeah, it's very interesting, but I think that way we can tap into everybody's sort of, I guess, phrases of what they believe to be community. Because even things like, you know, you might get a young Gen Z girl, for example, who doesn't want to come to our events and doesn't really want to speak to us, but you know, they want to know that if they go out and they go to a nightclub on the weekend, when they come back, they've got a security guard there who they know the name of, and they know he'll look out for them and make sure they get home all right if they've had a bit too much to drink. And that's their kind of view of the community. So yeah, it's very interesting. And I think, as I say, there's a lot of pressure on operators, but I think it's really good in terms of giving us opportunities to really be innovative now.
Yeah. There's loads more we could go on to, but unfortunately we've absolutely fast. But it's been a great discussion. Thanks to you all. I'm just going to show a few quick slides before we wrap up. And as I said earlier, we're going to leave the session open for a couple of minutes after we've finished, so you can all take some notes from the chat. But just got a couple of quick slides to show first. So the next Urban Living webinar, which is the final one of this year, is our trends for 2023, when we'll be talking about what we think will be affecting the hospitality and real estate sectors next year. And if you look in the chat, you can see a link to register for that webinar. A quick plug for our Recharge event, which is a great event we do every year, and it moves around to a different fantastic European city. And towards the end of January, we're going to be in Lisbon. Again, more info and ticket links in the chat. If you're interested in working with us, IHM, across our digital or live platforms, then please get in touch with my colleague Katie, whose details you can see on the screen and again also in the chat. And finally, a big thank you to you all for watching, to Yianni and Dheraen for their contributions, especially to Rachel. Fantastic job, Rachel. We dropped you right in the deep end for this one, and it was really interesting to hear what you had to say. So thank you very much, and well done. If you're not following us already on these various social channels, then please do. Thank you to Minute and to Price Labs for sponsoring. And I think that's about it. I think we're done. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.